As teachers, we have our syllabus. We can call it syllabus, curriculum, whatever you want to call it. And today the curriculum or the syllabus goes to the home as well. Because today learning happens as an extension of what's happening in school, and therefore we have the curriculum. Then you have the teaching learning methods. We use different methods by which we convey what we want to our students. And third is assessment. So these are the three circles in which we exist. All teachers, wherever they are, we will exist in one of these three circles. There can be an overlap, but basically these three circles will be the area, our domain and our kingdom, and this is where we function. What we often forget is that these three circles exist in a safe learning environment. If these three circles have to be effective, if these three circles have to contribute effectively, they must happen in this big square. And this big square, which is in yellow, is the safe learning environment. So anything that we do as teachers, be it the syllabus issue, be it teaching learning methods, be it assessment, it all has to happen in a safe learning environment. Otherwise, all our efforts will be useless, it will be futile, it will not be effective. And that is why I chose this topic, because at the end of it all, we teachers must be aware of what is a safe learning environment and what we can do. We have a tremendous responsibility to create this safe learning environment. How can we do it? The safe learning environment, as I mentioned to you, has got an expression which conveys that the student feels comfortable. The student feels that this is where I can learn. I'm happy to learn. And this is what we are going to explore in this session. Get the learning environment right, and the learning will look after itself. This was a quote taken from Alan Clark, which I think is so right. And yet it is the most ignored, least spoken about. And it is therefore important for us to understand the importance of the right optimum learning environment. I'm going to share with you certain principles, certain guidelines, certain norms which govern the safe learning environment and what we can do to make it happen. So I call these as maxims. Maxims are nothing but rules. First maxim is don't undervalue relationship with students. These two things, that is, one is learning and the other thing is the relationship. We often think that these two are not linked, but the reality is that a good relationship will foster better learning. And to understand that, we must understand the word rapport. Rapport means that connection, that link that we have with our students. And what does this rapport mean? Rapport actually can be expanded to mean meaningful relationship. Meaningful relationship means a relationship which will be beneficial for both. You enjoy that relationship. We have relationship with many people in the world, but not all our relationships are meaningful. Meaningful relationship can be with a friend. Meaningful relationship could be with a brother. It could be with a sister. It could be with your spouse. Not all relationships are meaningful. Similarly, can we convert our very official relationship with our students to something more meaningful? Why is it that some teachers are able to establish a better rapport? Because they have established a meaningful relationship and the students look up to that teacher. So R stands for relationship. Approachability is the second aspect, which means the teacher must appear to be approachable. Only then a student will feel like coming. If the teacher is so distanced, the teacher is not approachable, then the student may never come, either out of fear or some reluctance. Patience. One of the requirements for any teacher is unlimited dose of patience. Patience, patience, and patience. Ultimately, be patient. Don't expect overnight results from our students. Constant encouragement, positive reinforcement is one magic that will work with every student. Keep encouraging them, supporting them. Open communication. Listen to them. Listening to our students is so important. We often say the difference between listening and hearing. When you listen, your heart is close to the ear. When you only hear, the heart is far away from the ear. So when you bring the heart close to the ear, you are listening. Are we listening to our students with our hearts close to our ears? And that is the key to open communication. The single most important communication skill is listening. Many people forget this. Learn to listen and you have learned to communicate. Respect for their views. Maybe childish views, but remember, whatever they say, listen and try to understand. Give that respect for their views, and in that you're respecting that child as well, and trust. So ultimately, rapport means all this. And if you really want to see what is rapport, this is what rapport is all about. In this rapport will determine the texture of your relationship with your students. We learn best from people we care about and from people who we believe care about us. Ultimately, it is that. Whom do we learn from most? Those whom we love, whom we look up to, whom we look forward to being with. These are the people, and therefore can we create that relationship that will make your students look up to you. They enjoy being with you. They will naturally learn when they are with you. Second maxim is don't use fear, threat, or sarcasm to establish control. As teachers, we want to have discipline in the classroom. All of us have been students and we have been the victims of fear, threat, and sarcasm. We all know what it has been when we suffered often at the hands of teachers who were considered to be terrors. Today, the trend is changing. Today, the trend is different, and we must be aware we cannot use fear, threat, or sarcasm. Sarcasm, I have to spend a little time because today we cannot use physical abuse. We cannot use violence in that way because it is, first of all, it is not recommended. It is to be prohibited. But we teachers take pleasure in using sarcasm. Sarcasm means you humiliate a student. You make the student feel very bad, very low amidst his classmates. You give a remark that is so sarcastic that the student feels belittled, very, very low. And that is sarcasm. We use this weapon, which I think is very, very unfortunate. And we should, as teachers, never, ever use fear, threat, or sarcasm. Pain from words has left its scar on mind and heart. That's tender. Cuts and bruises now have healed. It's words that I remember. They will always remember many, 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 many years later the words that you have used, the sarcasm, the scorn that you have used. But they may probably have had several injuries, physical injuries which would have healed, but these emotional wounds will be very, very difficult to forget. So please remember this, never ever to be humiliate or make a student feel low, lower his self-esteem. Learn to laugh with the students, not at them. Many decades ago, when I was in charge of the college entertainment, I organized a skit where I made fun of the students in the skit. After the event was over, my dean, Professor A. Krishna Rao, he was the dean of this medical college for over 20 years. And he called me to his cabin and he said, please remember, whenever we have to put up any entertainment, Let us learn to laugh with the students, never at them. From that day, that was the lesson I learned for my life. Never laugh at the students, never ridicule them. Let us learn to laugh with the students, never at them. This was the message of my dean, who just told me that, and from that day, it was something, it's a lifelong learning for me. This is the message I carry with me at all times, never to mock our students, never to laugh at our students, though the temptation may be there for us to have a hearty laugh. Never let us laugh at our students. Don't show off knowledge, show them concern. This is the third maxim. As a teacher, we are very knowledgeable, well prepared and confident. We are expert. And there is the other component, the second dimension to it, and that is you are amiable, you're affable, personable, very approachable, and this is what we call, for want of a better word, in the literature they've used the word attractive authority, but I think you could even say very amiable or very cordial authority. Now, if you combine the two, you have two dimensions. The first is the intellectual dimension, and the other is the interpersonal dimension. The real effective teacher, the welcoming teacher, is somebody who is not only good in intellectual dimension, but also good in interpersonal dimension. We as teachers will be complete. We will become whole only when we have both these components. This alone will not make you complete. The interpersonal dimension must complement the intellectual dimension, and only then you become a complete teacher. Students do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. The student must see your care. They know your knowledge, but they must know that you care for them. And this statement by John Maxwell is perhaps something that you should always keep reminding yourself, that students do not care how much you know until they know how much you care for them. That genuine care and concern for them is what that's going to touch them, that they will remember. A study was done to find out what is the single most important attribute of a teacher. When the study was done, everybody thought knowledge is going to be the single most important attribute. But when the survey was done, students voted for one aspect, and that is the care and concern that the teacher had for me. That came paramount. Everything else was secondary. They believe that ultimately what will determine learning is how the teacher has taken care, how the teacher has shown concern for students' learning. The fourth maxim is, don't reduce students' understanding to marks and grades. In an academic setting, in a school, in a college, wherever you are, ultimately we determine a student's performance by the marks and grades. When we consider the practically universal use in all educational institutions of a system of marks, we can but be astonished at the blind faith that has been felt in the reliability of the marking systems. We think it is the gold standard. Having a mark or a grade or a class is the gold standard, and that we consider the gold standard of learning, which is rather unfortunate, because performance is very easy to measure. We are giving a mark or a grade depending on the performance of a student, be it a written exam or a practical exam or an experiment. But it doesn't in any way indicate how much the student has learned. Performance is an easy measure, easily measured for you. So we make it convenient. But please remember, performance does not equate the actual learning. Learning is very difficult to measure, and we sometimes sidetrack it. Let us be aware of it. In other words, let us not give too much importance to the mark, the grade. That may be all right. It is necessary because we have no other way. But please remember, that doesn't actually in any way indicate learning. Please remember this. I'm not saying that you don't give importance to marks, but we have given too much importance to marks and grades. That is Let it be there, but please remember the student's learning is more important than his attainment of a mark or a grade. Don't forget students' diverse talents and ways of learning. Please remember that everybody is a genius. This is what Albert Einstein said. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And I want to take you to the story of the animal school. They decided to have a school in the curriculum, and all the animals got together and said, in this school, running will be in the curriculum, climbing will be in the curriculum, swimming will be in the curriculum, flying will be in the curriculum. And all the animals were expected to perform all these. You can imagine what will happen. All animals cannot do all this. And therefore, you will have some animals failing, some animals doing one skill very well. This is exactly what happens in our school situation. We have prescribed different subjects, expecting every student to perform extremely well in all is difficult. And do you know who came first in the animal school? There's an animal called EEL. Eel. Eel is a very slow moving animal. Eel. EEL. It could do everything little bit. And this is the eel that came first. So in our school setting also, very often it is like that. We want everyone to perform equally well in all, which may not be possible. Let us be aware of it. Accept this. This awareness is important for us as teachers. Also remember, when we deal with students, there are some who learn best by seeing. Some people learn best by hearing. Some always have to write something as they read and learn. And some people do something. We learn best by doing. Now, all of us, our own styles, if you will look back at your own lives, some of us learn best when we have done something. Some of us, when we see something, we'll always remember. Photographic memory. Please remember, our children, our students have different learning styles. That means when we teach them, we must provide opportunities in all the 4 areas. We must give visual opportunities, hearing opportunities, reading and writing opportunities, as well as actually doing opportunities. Combined, so that in a class you'll have a mix of all types of students. And no one is a pure visual or a pure oral. They are combinations. So let us be aware, if you can provide, that's why we say, let us provide different learning opportunities so that students can benefit from all that we can offer. A safe learning environment, therefore, we have seen 5 maxims. The first is not to undervalue relationship with students. Don't use fear, threat, or sarcasm to establish control. Don't show off knowledge, show them concern. Don't reduce students' understanding to marks and grades. Don't forget students' diverse talents and ways of learning. These are the first 5 maxims. These are simple, not that we did not know all this. I have only given a framework and a structure. And if we can take care of this, we are well on the road to creating a safe learning environment. The 6th maxim is, don't make classrooms suffocating. Allow ventilation of ideas. Classrooms have to be well ventilated physically, but more important, mentally. Is it possible to open up the classrooms and allow ventilation? When does a student feel suffocated? All of us have experienced this. When you look back at your own lives, there were occasions when you felt suffocated. I don't mean the physical suffocation. I'm talking of the mental suffocation. Fear. We use fear to threaten our students. We humiliate to have control of the class. We have students, today, I don't have to tell you, we are seeing so much of pressure coming on students because of peer pressure, parent pressure, so much of pressure on the student has lost the joy of learning. And please remember that student feels suffocated mentally. Sarcasm, I have mentioned this to you, sarcasm. And when I talk of sarcasm, I am reminded of the whip. WHIP. If you had gone to see a circus, if you have seen the person who controls the animal, could be an elephant, could be any animal, he uses the whip. Please remember, the whip has got 4 components: the sight of the whip, the sound of the whip, the shadow of the whip, the sting of the whip. Sight means an animal can look at the whip and do what is required. Not necessary to use the whip. Sight of the whip. Sound of the whip. Sometimes the sound of the whip is enough. Sometimes the shadow of the whip is enough. The sting of the whip is not required for every animal. In fact, it is not needed at all most of the time. Similarly, when we deal with our students, there is no need to use the sting. Very often, the sight is enough, the shadow is enough, the sound is enough. Unfortunately, we as teachers always resort to the sting of the whip. We don't need to use the whip and its sting. Very often, students respond. They are sensitive enough, they are responsive enough to respond to the sound or the sight or the shadow. And sometimes even that may not be necessary. What I'm telling you is, this is the control we have. And sarcasm is something like that. It is like the sting. It is a sting that will remain with them for the rest of their life. Never, ever use sarcasm on a student. Never. Not only on students, in life itself, it's best if you can avoid being sarcastic. If you do not express your own original ideas, you will have betrayed yourself. Maxim 7, don't give feedback that evaluates and expresses secondary feelings. I explained this telling you that when you give feedback, you must describe the behavior. Very often, we evaluate the behavior. We are judgmental. Whenever we give any feedback, describing the behavior is much more effective than giving a judgment. We often judge students and we pass a judgment. Our evaluation will be resented. The student will say, why is the teacher saying this about me? Whenever we describe, you must say what has happened and then say why that is not effective. That is description. Evaluation is, we say you are irresponsible, you are not interested. The student says, I'm interested, I have come to class. We evaluate. Our evaluations are generally indicating some sort of a judgment by us. So let us avoid evaluations whenever when we give feedback. Second thing is something called primary feeling and secondary feeling. What is primary feeling? What is secondary feeling? I'll explain this in a moment. When a student does badly in an examination and the student comes to see you, you are very angry. The student has not done well and you show your anger. Anger is secondary feeling, but the primary feeling is what? Sadness, disappointment. My dear student has not done well, he has not learned. I am sad. I am feeling very bad that the student is not. Primary feeling is sadness, disappointment. And yet, what we express is often anger. Anger is always a secondary feeling. When a student comes to see you, a student who has done badly, we often express our secondary feeling, which is anger. Actually, what we should express is primary feeling. You must tell the student, I'm so disappointed, I'm so sad that you did not pass the examination. I am there to help you. I am so disappointed, but I am willing to help you. Express your primary feeling. Don't say you are useless, you have not achieved anything, you are incapable. When you do that and give your secondary feeling through anger, the student does not see your concern and care. So when you give feedback, you must remember not to give feedback that evaluates and expresses secondary feelings, but give feedback that describes and expresses primary feeling. Describe the behavior and then say what your primary feeling. We unfortunately don't express sadness. We don't express disappointment. We express only anger. And the student, when he gets anger, he resents it and he will always remember this for the rest of his life. Feedback has got 4 components. When you give feedback, let it be constructive, let it be descriptive, let it be corrective, helping him or her to correct, and let it be reflective, making him think, when I do this again, how can I do better? From the teacher level, feedback has got 3 components: feed up, feedback, and feed forward. We are very good in giving feedback. We give instructions, but remember, we often give instructions only once. Please remember, students will hear instructions, but one time when you give instructions, things will not register. When you hear something once, they may not register. You may need to repeat. You may need to reinforce. Repetition is very important when you give instructions. That is feed up. Then after they have performed, we give feedback. That's fine. We say, okay, you have achieved this much, you have done this well, you have not done this so well, whatever. Then comes the most important feed forward. Feed forward is telling the student what he or she needs to do to perform better next time. That is feed forward. When they move forward, what they should modify, what they should alter. That is something which we don't spend time in. So when you really look at feedback, it has got 2 components, feed up and feed forward. But it's important that we give enough feed up opportunities, instruction opportunities. Feedback, of course, we are aware of, but more important, feed forward. That is, telling them what they should do differently so that they can improve. That is at the level of the teacher. From the student point of view, when you give feedback, please remember, it must have an impact on them. And remember, when a student is doing something, he is reflecting, he's thinking while he's doing, am I doing it right? I'm concentrating and doing some things. So is he going in the right step? He is thinking. That is reflection in action. After it's over, the student thinks, did I do it right? What went right? What went wrong? But most important, next time when I do this, what should I do to do better? And that will depend on the feed forward you have given. So feed forward has a very important link for their performance. Future performance will be determined by how well you have given feed forward, so that when the student does the same experiment or something again the next time, he will do better based on your feed forward. So please remember, feedback must be descriptive, it should never be judgmental, and most important, let there be a feed forward that will help a student to improve next time, do better next time. We judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions. This is the famous Stephen Covey's quote. Maxim 8, don't forget to set high expectations. And I am reminded of the story, the Pygmalion effect. My Fair Lady was a movie that was very, very popular when I was a school student. My Fair Lady is basically about telling a flower girl to be able to speak English well and to articulate, and then she is given so much encouragement that she passes on. People think that she's a well-educated, articulate, English-speaking person. In reality, she was just a flower girl. Pygmalion effect, the word Pygmalion is actually a Greek myth. There was a king who was also a sculptor, and he made a sculpture, and he made a very beautiful sculpture. He fell in love with it, and he loved it so much that it came alive. That's a story of the Pygmalion. Pygmalion, the Greek legend has it that, so similarly, what the message is this: if you go on encouraging, supporting, and giving the mentoring to your students, they will come alive. And that is what it says. If you set high expectations, it will lead to improved student performance. If you tell them you are capable, you can do it, you have the ability, keep encouraging them. This is what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy. This can work negatively. If you say you are stupid, you are useless, you cannot do this, they will become. It is important for us never to belittle them, never make them feel low. It is up to the teacher to elevate them, give them that joy and that spirit of learning through your encouragement. High achievement always takes place in the framework of high expectations. Ultimately, it is this. You set the expectations and they will reach for the stars. Maxim 9, don't underrate the value of student cohesiveness. Today's students want to work together. They work in collaboration. Today's students are all what we call the alpha generation. This is the current. Those born from 2011 onwards, they are referred to as alpha generation. Prior to that are the centennials. Prior to that are the millennials. So millennials are those born 82 onwards. Those born after 96 are called centennials. Those born from 2011 and 12, who are the students coming to school today, they are alpha generation. They like to work together. They like to question. And they like to work with a lot of freedom. They don't want restrictions. And that is why it is said, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, working together is success. Allow them, give them opportunities to work together, come together, and learn together. Don't miss teaching students the way they learn best. If students do not learn the way we teach them the way they learn. I want to recall one particular aspect about student learning, and that applies to our current generation of students. And for that, let us see what is this JIC and JIT. When we were teachers or when we were even students, we always taught our students saying, I will teach you this just in case you need it. Sometime later in life, I will teach you. So we live in the age of just in case. Just in case you need it, I'm teaching you this. Just in case you need this after 10 years, I will teach you. Just in case, just in case. We have lived in the age of just in case. We are just in case learners. We are also just in case teachers. We go on teaching just in case. But please remember, today's students are just in time. Our students today, today's generation, they are not interested about tomorrow. They want to live today. You tell me what I should do today. I am not worried about your tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Just in time. They are JIT learners. They are not very much worried about the future. They are worried about the present. How can I live happily today? How can I learn today? What can I do today? What can I achieve today? They are just in time learners. We as teachers must be acutely aware of this. If you don't, when you often go into the just in case mode, they will say, I am not interested in all this. Tell me what I should do today. Just in time. So just in time learning is what is prevalent among the current generation. Our students are like that. So you have to accept the fact that that generation is like that. So our students today live in the just in time learning. And we have to be aware of it. Don't tell them things which might come to them 10 or 15 years later. They might never ever remember it. So remember this JIC and JIT. Basically, our students are in the JIT mode of learning, whereas we are all in the JIC mode of learning. We also must remember that content knowledge all of us have. Pedagogical knowledge is the ability to understand how a student learns. And I've told you some of these things, the characteristics of today's generation. So we must be aware of the pedagogical knowledge, the ability with which we are able to convey so that the student learns. Then comes technological knowledge. All of us became technologically very conversant because of the pandemic. Thanks to the pandemic, we all became much more conversant technologically. And then comes the combination. So this is what is called the T-pack. All of us have content knowledge, but we must put an effort to know how a student learns. And of course, we must also put an effort to become technologically competent. We can never compete with our students as far as technology is concerned. We can never be as tech savvy as our students, but at least the effort that we put in will be appreciated by our students. And if you take 1 or 2 steps ahead, they will come 10 steps forward and beat you. So with them together, let us use this T-pack. Content knowledge, yes, but let us be aware of the learning abilities. With the increasing presence of technology in the classroom, the role of the effective teacher is not diminished. Instead, it becomes even more indispensable. Teacher, the living, loving teacher, is much more needed today in the digital era than at any time before. So please remember this. Never can you ever think that the teacher is not needed. The living, loving teacher is the key to learning. Safe learning environment, we have seen the remaining 5. Sixth one, don't make classrooms suffocating, allow ventilation of ideas. Don't give feedback that evaluates and expresses secondary feelings. Don't forget to set high expectations. Don't underrate the value of student cohesiveness. And don't miss teaching students the way they learn best. Remember that they are the alpha generation. Please remember, safe learning environment is not just created by announcement. You can announce, we have a safe learning environment, nothing will happen. It is up to you, and it is your responsibility and your ability to create this. It is not possible without student involvement. It cannot be done single-handedly by the teacher. And please remember, when you create a safe learning environment, you are allowing student development. The student will also grow in that, and development of the student happens. And when he becomes an adult, he too will generate a type of learning environment that is suitable for the people around him to learn. So now I ask you the question, where is this safe learning environment? I gave you 10 maxims. Where is it? Is it a geographical space? Is it something surrounding all that I have told you? Where is this safe learning environment? Think about it. Where is the safe learning environment? Is it a physical environment? Is it something that you can create around your curriculum, your learning methods, and your assessment? Please remember, the safe learning environment is just a space created in the students' minds to seamlessly promote learning. So this is my definition. I'm coming to this definition after sharing with you the maxims of safe learning environment. It is the space you create in the minds of the students, and there is simply no limit. In the mind of the student, if you can create that space, you have taken the first step, the right step, the best step forward. As teachers, let us always endeavor to create a safe learning environment. The article related to this presentation was published in one of the journals, and this is the reference to it.